Hey there, fight fans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this episode of Combat Sports Talk. Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me this week is the double champ, George G-Money Stallworth. How are you today, sir?
Good. How about you, bro?
I'm doing all right. I am ready to get into the show. The one thing that I have to say about the show this week is that it was my intent to really do the show on UFC Vegas 25, but there is a story that's kind of overshadowing the UFC and the MMA community, and that is the saga of Diego Sanchez. Now, he was the nightmare, then he became the dream, then he became Lionheart, went back to the nightmare. His career over 15 years has just gone up and down and all around. He is a mainstay in the MMA world and in the UFC.
Dude, I saw part of that clip off of his Instagram or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Diego sounds very, what's the word? He sounds there.
Really?
I know a lot of people are saying, when you go back and look at the bigger context of everything that's going on, of course, you can nitpick, because today when I was looking through the run sheet, I saw some of the information you posted, and it brought about a broader context of what was going on, because I didn't know we're going to get into it anyway, but you mind if I go ahead and let this go?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get right into the Diego Sanchez story. This is the number one story we want to talk about this week. This is the headliner. All right, so we're going to talk about Diego Sanchez. And so let's start off with just kind of the headline for everybody. Diego Sanchez, after 16 years in the UFC, was released, I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday last week, before his final fight on his contract against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And so this started kind of just a big storm of stories that were going back and forth between Dana White and the UFC and Joshua Fabia, his coach, mentor, trainer extraordinaire, that that Diego Sanchez has basically given his life to. So that's kind of the headline, is Diego Sanchez, after 16 years, has been released from the UFC. Now, let's begin to kind of unravel some of that and talk about what's going on around the seams of that's causing this strife to be such a newsworthy thing.
Okay, so let's back it up a few years.
All right.
Probably been about 2 years ago, somewhere off in there, maybe a little bit longer.
Sure.
Diego Sanchez was training out of Winklejohn's now.
Yep.
Right. And so somewhere along the line, Diego apparently was at a regular gym and ran into this young man who happened to be Fabia.
Yeah, Josh Fabia.
They began communicating, and before you know it, Fabia is at Winklejohn's training Diego. Like, Winklejohn literally said, "Hey, I walked out of the office one day, and there's this guy over here training one of my fighters." So of course Winklejohn goes in to see what's going on and to understand what's going on, because that's very, what would you say? It's inappropriate in a gym. You don't go into somebody's gym and start training one of their fighters or whatever and not at least have a conversation with the coach or the owners, or someone needs to know you're in there. There's liability issues, if nothing else, to be concerned about if this guy hurt one of your fighters or hurt somebody else. So anyway, that initial meeting kind of gives you some insight into where this story is headed all along. Just not understanding gym culture, not understanding nuance in the gym, not understanding protocol, period. So let's fast forward. Fabia, at some point or another, and Diego totally separate from Winklejohn's, and Diego now is a fighter under Fabia's fold. Couple of fights passed through. I think he had one loss, one win under Fabio, something to that. But all doing this, Fabio is his commentary to different people in the UFC and to reporters and different people is coming across a little odd and weird. Like literally, I think he told the commission in Vegas once that they need to be careful because he's taught Diego a death touch. He can,
Right. Right. So
on
when
another
Diego,
occasion,
yeah, when Diego Sanchez was supposed to fight Michael Chiesa, Joshua Fabia went to the Nevada State Athletic Commission and told him that he had taught Diego Sanchez a technique that could kill Michael Chiesa in the ring, which caused all kinds of craziness for the UFC, because now it's like the Athletics Commission is like, whoa, we can't have you doing we can't have you killing people in the ring. And so it just another one of those violation of protocols and just a lack of awareness, which is interesting because Joshua Fabia operates something called the Center of Self-Awareness. And this was a key example of many where he lacked self-awareness.
So with that being said, I think on another occasion, he went to another commission and told them he had taught Diego a chokehold that will result in death if he administered it properly. So now this is the ongoings of a year and a half, different things. Whenever Diego was in the news or anything like that, Fabia became associated. Fabia had a falling out. I wouldn't even call it a falling out. He got into it with Matt Serra, if I'm not mistaken, over an occasion where they saw each other or something to that effect. And Matt said, "Hey, you know, I don't agree with this guy being in Diego's life. I feel like he's a leech." And Fabio took objection to that.
Right.
There's
so
also
there was a situation. I'm just coloring. So Matt Serra had said something. It was basically a kind of a throwaway comment. You know, someone asked him like, you know, what do you think of this whole thing going on with Diego Sanchez? And it was a throwaway comment like, you know, I don't care for that guy. I don't even think about that guy. That guy's not even, you know, I don't even know what's going on with that guy. But Joshua Fabia heard that and took issue with that and basically confronted Matt Serra about it, and it nearly came to blows. Like Matt Serra, UFC Hall of Famer Matt Serra, came in and just was like, "Listen, I don't need you to be in my face about this. Like, you don't know who you're talking to." And it nearly erupted into what would have been, you know, a beatdown, unless Fabia would have been able to execute some of those death touch and killer chokes on Matt Serra. It would have been something that would have not been a good day. We've seen Matt Serra, you know, take over, a bar brawl and separate people and keep them from fighting. You know, Matt Serra is a legit fighter, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
So to for Fabia to hear this throwaway quote and get a chip on his shoulder, and then face off against one of the UFC's favorite people, it's another one of those demerits on his story.
Well, it goes even further. So then there was another incident where Fabia posted some video clip of him actually chasing fighters around an octagon with a knife and deemed it as part of training.
This is true. Yes.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are some unorthodox methods to train people out there, but I can't ever think of an occasion where I, as a coach, would take an actual knife and chase after another human being and call it training. That very suspect.
Yeah, that was something that film was leaked by Emil Meek, and you might remember Emil Meek. Emil Meek was the fighter who fought Kamaru Usman on Kamaru Usman's very famous 30% comment. So he had trained over there with Joshua Fabia, and it was an insane thing to watch. Is Fabia's chasing everybody with a knife, yelling everything's a knife, and people are running out of the way. I don't know how that translates to action in the ring. Like, what movements?
maybe just innate movement and things like that, or having that fear and being able to adjust and move in that I don't know. I don't even want to speculate because it's not something that I would approve or want done with anyone that I train or teach or coach.
Right.
I'm trying to think of some of the other incidents that Fabi has been involved in.
Well, there have been multiple times where he has approached members of the press and members of the
Oh,
media about the way that Diego Sanchez is characterized in their stories and in their commentary. And the fact is that Diego Sanchez has, over the years, and many people have speculated CTE has played a role in this, but he has become more and more just, you know, incoherent.
mhm.
Really the way that he has talked, he's been on podcasts and radio shows, and it's the things that he says, and Fabia is always right at his side. And so people, as they look back, they start putting two and two together to see that Diego was always a little bit off the rocker, but he has gone just completely off into left field, since Fabia has been there. And because people start pointing at Fabia, that means Diego Sanchez, that means Josh Fabia have approached and really been aggressively speaking to a lot of the people that we know and love in the media and in the press.
So yes, they specifically pointed out comments that Joe Rogan has made before.
Right.
They specifically commented on some comments from the UFC commentary team. I think
Mm-hmm.
specifically Daniel Cormier. And here,
Mm-hmm.
most recently, Fabia goes into a commentary production team meeting, much
Mm-hmm.
like the meetings that we've discussed we should be having.
We should be having,
Uh,
yeah.
but with that being said, Fabia goes into this meeting and has the nerve to admonish these reporters, these journalists, these administrative staff for their portrayal of him specifically, not Diego, him as well in the
Mm-hmm.
media and the product that they're putting out. And Angie Overkill Hill calls him on it. She's like, "But you're recording right now in order to put this out. Like, we're not creating the story, we're telling the story,
Mm-hmm.
we're showing the story, and which is no different than what you're trying to do here by recording this or whatever, and
Yeah.
maybe even spin it to your side." So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that turned into a big brouhaha, man, because they had multiple people in there who probably weren't ever even on, Diego's radar, so to speak,
Right.
or Diego was never on their radar. With that being said, I think they didn't gain any fans as a result of that. But fast forward another day or two, and another video is put out, and it's Diego speaking by himself now without Fabio in the picture. I assume that
Mm-hmm.
Fabio was probably the one recording, but maybe Diego was recording himself. And Diego spoke very candidly. And many of the points he made, my heart started to go out to him because I realized in all of this craziness that's going on around him, even though everybody's claiming to want to be looking out for Diego, he is being forgotten in this. And to hear him speak, to let it out himself, it touched my heart. But what I was saying earlier was that he actually spoke very well, or very put together. I would say kind of coherently to his points. But now, after having seen the run sheet, I'm also seeing some of the other side to the story because Diego was talking about, hey, I got this call from the UFC brass, and they Hunter Campbell or somebody told me to check my email immediately because you're not going to be able to fight if you don't respond to this email. He says he checks the email, and they want him to provide a statement that there's, that he has no brain damage, basically.
Right.
And Diego's like, where's this coming from? Like, why am I getting this all of a sudden? But now the context has been made clearer. This was in response to Fabio requesting all the medical records over the last 16 years of Diego's
Career.
career.
Yeah.
So the UFC's brass is protecting themselves, saying, "Oh, this sounds like a setup for a lawsuit. We'll preempt that right now." But and so it looks. When I heard Diego tell it, it looked a little bit more shady on the UFC's part. But now I understand where the UFC was coming from in that. So I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I think there needs to be communication between all parties involved, and it does not need to involve Fabio.
Yeah, and that's part of where this gets very interesting, because the UFC and Joshua Fabia released a phone call because that he recorded of the UFC talking to him about his request. So Joshua Fabia, it seems like and for those of you who are watching, you can chat in the box and let us know what you think on this topic. But specifically, it seems as though the request for 15 or 16 years of medical records came out of the blue. Before they will let you sign the contract to fight, you have to pass the physical, and Diego Sanchez did that. So they're like, okay, great. Diego Sanchez passed the physical, did all the requisite stuff to justify that he is able to fight.
Not just the physical in Diego's case. Because of his age, he's required to undergo a little bit more stringent testing. He has to have an EKG, he has to have an MRI, and maybe one or two other tests that normal physicals don't require. But because of his age, I think in most states, it's anyone over the age of 36, 37 who intends to fight has to have that more stringent form of a physical.
Right. Well, Diego Sanchez passed, so nothing else should have happened in the lead up to Donald Cerrone's fight, which is why it became such a red flag when Fabia's like, well, in order for me to process his medicals, I need every record the UFC has, a copy of every record the UFC has on Diego Sanchez. And so this is where the UFC is like, wait, is Diego okay? Because what happened? We recorded this like 3 years ago. We reported when Mark Hunt fought Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar had the, got popped for PEDs. And so Mark Hunt actually sued the UFC because he was saying that over the course of his career, he had incurred, neurological damage in the form of what could have been CTE. And the UFC put him into a match with a guy that they had high probability of him being PED'd. UFC was in court and had so many cases on this with Mark Hunt that they did not want to deal with this again with Diego Sanchez. So that's why they called and was like, we need to know whether or not you have suffered any neurological damage, if there's any question of whether or not you could fight on next Saturday night. And basically, I don't know if it's Fabio or Diego Sanchez, had their lawyer send a note back saying that Diego Sanchez could not confirm.
He's not capable of confirming.
He's not capable of confirming. And so it's like, if you're not going to say that, it's not like the UFC doesn't have doctors. It's not like Diego Sanchez doesn't have access to doctors. It's not like to do these tests, it's going to take 2, 3, 5, 6 weeks. There's the opportunity to be able to go and put this under the rug. They could have easily said, not under the rug. That seems shady, but they could have put this to bed. Is what I'm trying to say. Is that Diego Sanchez could have been like, I'm not a doctor, but I am going to the neurological thing. It's scheduled for Wednesday. We can either wait for those results or postpone the fight until I get that clarification. There's a lot of things they could have done.
And that would have been the smart thing to do, because guess what? He's still under contract at that point.
Correct. And so what ended up happening, and Dana White, at least as what he says, and I think demonstrated by the fact that Diego Sanchez, up until this point, hasn't been cut, even though he has lost a lot of fights at the end of his career. Dana White has always said that he loves Diego Sanchez and wants to keep him around as long as he can. To go and say, I'm not a coach, I'm not a doctor, I can't verify or validate whether or not I have received any neurological injuries, is basically the red flag that the UFC needed to say, look, we're going to pay you your show money. We're going to pay you anything that we owe you, because they paid him his show money. I think they even might have paid him win money. They paid him.
And they also paid him the
sponsorship
Venom reimbursement. Yeah.
They gave him all the money, and they said, you go on with your life. And now Diego Sanchez and specifically Joshua Fabia are calling foul. And they're saying, "Oh, what happened? Why is the UFC doing this to us?"
This, in my opinion, this is Fabia's fault.
I agree.
Fabia instigated it by requesting those medical records. Number one, Diego should have a manager on hand. That was Diego's manager's job. Allegedly, Fabia is the manager, coach, nutritionist. What else is he claiming? Just his strength and conditioning coach. All these
everything.
things. Mm-hmm. And so that's all I can say is he appears to be the problem. He appears. If anybody's suffering from CTE, it's not Diego, it's Fabia.
Well, and that's the thing, and so we'll leave it at that. Dana White reacts to sad release of Diego Sanchez, blaming creepy weirdo for nightmare collapse. This is an interesting way to kind of end this. MMA Mania, of course, this is a story from them. And Dana White said, "I have an incredible, amazing relationship with Diego, and I like him very much, and I hope he's okay." He said, "One of the sad things that happens, not just in fighting, but in sports, and I want you to quote me on this, are these creepy weirdos who come from God knows where and leech onto fighters or athletes. They never do any good for them." And this is one of those things where it's like, this isn't the first time we saw it. Remember, Chris Cyborg was brought into the UFC, and Dana White had basically built the featherweight division for Chris Cyborg. Mm-hmm. And we already know that Dana White and Chris Cyborg have had a tenuous relationship, but she was in the UFC. She was well on her way to fully establishing herself as the greatest female fighter in the history of WMMA. And once she lost to Amanda Nunes, then it was like, oh, well, Dana White, we're going to make these demands. We're going to make these demands. And so the UFC is like, you know what? Screw it. We're just going to cut you. Well, that is there was 100%
backdrop.
Oh, go ahead.
There's backdrop to that story too, though, because Cyborg's manager at the time was Tito.
Right.
And Tito and Dana don't see eye to eye.
Right. And so it ends up happening that because of bad management or poor management, Chris Cyborg left the UFC. Now she's got a career in Bellator, but because she's not able to make that fight up against Amanda Nunes and get that one back, she will always be number 2. Mm-hmm. And so, it's that lack of strategy, that lack of foresight that some of these managers have whenever they think that, oh, my fighter is so good and I need to go and strong arm a person who's in a superior negotiating position. You're going to lose every single time. Like the UFC, and this is why Kelechi, if he was here, what would he say? That's why we need a fighters union, right? So we got to all take a drink on that one because of the fact that the UFC is in the power position. You cannot strong arm them, you cannot beat them, and so therefore you have to be measured and strategic in the way that you deal with the UFC. And Joshua Fabia showed that he does not have those skills whatsoever to be able to manage a fighter in the UFC. And now he doesn't have a fighter in the UFC.
This should be a lesson to all fighters who are pros. Management is important. I think, who was it? John Bones Jones said it one time. He's like, dude, that 20% or whatever it is I pay my management team is money well spent. So management is most important, man. If you are going to make a profession out of this, if you're going to be a professional fighter, if you're going to involve yourself in the combat sports arena in order to make money, management is key.
Right. And that should hold true for any professional sports. You're going to go into professional sports, football, basketball. What's the first thing they do before they even get into the draft? What is the first thing they do? They get an agent, they get a manager, and they get someone who understands the business, who knows the rules of the road, and who can navigate them successfully. You don't just pick up some geek off the street. So, cautionary tale, please don't be like Diego Sanchez. Don't be like, don't let someone who is clearly creating havoc in your life in because there's no good comes out of it. And I'm heartbroken for Diego Sanchez because I don't think that he sees it. And I dread the day when Diego Sanchez realizes that it wasn't Mike Winkeljohn, it wasn't Dana White, it wasn't the press, it wasn't the media, it was Josh Fabia. Like I at this point, I hope he never finds that out.
He's definitely being hoodwinked, so to speak, and Fabia appears to be a master at this because he keeps putting up these illusionary opponents in front of Diego and saying they're the problem. Dana White's the problem. Hunter Campbell's the problem. Winkeljohn's the problem. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I don't understand is where are Diego's other friends? Like Stephen Bonnar, from what I've seen, is really
Bonnar,
hanging out and spending, is hanging out, spending a lot of time with them lately. And he's maybe a little bit off sometimes too. I've heard some weird things.
Yeah, Stephen Bonnar is a bit off his rocker as well. But I believe, and this goes back to last year or maybe even 2 years ago when we covered Stephen Bonnar and Diego Sanchez's relationship. Even Stephen Bonnar was like, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like I may have to try to see if I can find the run sheet where we talk about it. But Stephen Bonnar was like they were sitting out on a mountain looking for UFOs. That was what they spent time doing. And he swear he saw a UFO. And it's like there are it's just way outside of the norm. And so maybe it's real, but I haven't seen any evidence that this whole thing that's surrounding Diego Sanchez is anything other than just a disaster. All right, do you got anything else to say on that one?
No, I think we spent way too much time on it, honestly. But it is in the news. It is noteworthy, and my heart goes out to Diego, man. Like I said, when I saw him speak, it touched me.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully Diego Sanchez will see the light. But if he doesn't, I'm torn there because I really just. How tragic will it be if he does realize that the problem wasn't all these other things that were posed off as problems? It was the guy he trusted the most. All right, let's go into something better. And this is UFC Vegas 25, Reyes versus Prochazka. That fight, that card, amazing. Let's get into it. This is the official decision. All right, this is the official decision. This is where we look at the fights that were on Saturday night. Now, there were other fights. Like PFL had fights. ONE FC, we watched Eddie Alvarez on ONE FC on Wednesday. We didn't preview those fights, so I'm not necessarily covering those fights. Maybe if we have a little bit of time, we can cover it. We can talk a little bit about some of the action that happened there. But we want to talk about UFC Vegas 25, Reyes versus Prochazka, Saturday, May 1st at the Apex Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. There were 5 fights on the card, but we're going to go back to the featured event of the prelims and talk a little bit about Ronda Marcos versus Luana Pinheiro. Pinheiro defeated Marcos by disqualification. So basically, this was a bit of a barn burner. Ronda Marcos and Luana Pinheiro were going back and forth. Pinheiro was getting the better of the exchanges. She dropped Ronda Marcos on her head like 7 times, judo throws, and that was just in the first round. But as we were getting close to the end of the round, there was another takedown that Pinheiro landed. And as Marcos is fighting Pinheiro off, she up kicks Pinheiro right to the side of the face. I mean, full foot to the side of the face.
Now you have to put the disclaimer in there. Pinheiro was on her knees. That's what made it illegal.
Right.
So an up kick in itself is not a problem.
Right. But when the opponent is a downed opponent, you cannot. I mean, this is basically a similar situation to Peter Yan, right? Except there's really no way that Ronda Marcos could have known or could have seen that Ronda Marcos was on her back and what? You don't
I'm gonna need you to
agree?
go back and watch that fight. There's no way Ronda didn't know that this woman was on her knees. Didn't know
Okay.
that this woman was on her knees.
Let me say it a different way then. Because that's I'm misspeaking. Ronda Marcos did not intentionally throw this kick. She is in the midst of the battle. She's trying to get Luana, who has been all over her, off of her to try to get back up. I don't think this was an intentional kick.
Ryan, she didn't throw just one, she threw two. The first one hit the girl in the shoulder first, and then the second one hit her in the face. How do you not think that wasn't intentional?
All right, well, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it because I only saw one kick, but maybe two. Maybe she landed two. I will. Either way, the kick was devastating enough that Pinheiro landed on her back, was rolling around. It was kind of funny because I think it might have been Paul Felder. One of them was like, I don't remember who the broadcasting team was, but someone on the broadcasting team was like, yeah, she's looking like she's acting, like, oh, she's acting, trying to get that win. And then they heard her ask, did I lose the fight? And he's like, no, she's out of it. Like, I'm sorry, I take it back. I didn't realize that she is really out. Homegirl is out, and that's when they disqualified Ronda Marcos. But what's interesting is that Pinheiro was so out of it that her coach carried her backstage, like in his arms.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's insane.
So I was watching this fight at the bar, and a lot of the crowd echoed that same sentiment. They thought that she was faking it, and I was like, no, this is real. Up kick to the face on a grounded opponent. I was like, she's rocked. Her brain is concussed. Her brain rattled around in her head. There's no way around it. She was not faking at all. And even though it appeared that way or whatever, it's no different in a computer. When you reboot a computer and it takes too long to set back up, you don't know what you're going to get when it comes back on. You don't know where it's going to start up at. And that's right. what happened with her. You said it. Her first question was, did I lose the fight? She didn't even know where she was or what had taken place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was clear. She asked that question that whenever somebody's knocked out, it's always what happened, right? Like, that's what she was asking, because she was it was a hard reboot, and so therefore they disqualified Marcos, and it was a really scary time. Let's go on to the main card. Merab Dvalishvili defeated Cody Stamann via unanimous decision.
How you say Merab's name again?
Merab Dvalishvili. There you go.
Say it one more time for me.
Now look, now you got me nervous now. Here we go.
I'm just playing, man. I don't know how to pronounce it. Don't get me going.
Dvalishvili. Merab doggone it. I was smooth. No, it's Dvalishvili. It's Dvalishvili. Dvalishvili. There you go. Merab Dvalishvili. There you go.
We over here hacking up this man's name. I hope I never meet him in person.
Yeah, if he does, tell him your name is Kelechi Onyebuchi, and I'll be John Keith. Wearing red.
So, did you get a chance to see this fight?
So I saw highlights of this fight, but it looked like Merab was all over Stamann. Like, this thing. It
was a good fight, man.
30-27, 29-28, 29-28. Good fight. You want to talk about it?
No, nothing per se. It was a good fight, though. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of action.
All right. In the next fight of the night, Krzysztof Jotko and Sean Strickland. Strickland defeated Jotko by unanimous decision. Looked like he had 2 30-27s and 1 29-28.
Yeah, this was another one I thought was going to be a little bit more competitive than it was, but Strickland came out and just marched forward and just tactically dismantled Krzysztof.
Jotko, yeah. That's one of those things. I'm going to look up Jotko Krzysztof's record, because I think he's kind of on a bit of a skid, isn't he?
No, I thought both of them were like 22-4. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
Jotko's
if he's
last
on a
fight was
skid or
against
not.
Eric Anders. Eric Anders won by decision. So, and then in the previous ones, yeah, he was on a three fight win streak. The last fight that he lost was Brad Tavares back in 2018.
Hmm.
So he was on a 3-fight win streak, whereas Sean Strickland, of course, was definitely on the come up. Looking at his record right
So,
now.
well, Strickland had been out for a while. I think he'd been injured. It was the story behind him.
Yeah, Strickland was coming in on a 3-fight win streak as well. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He'd beaten Brendan Allen and Jack Marshman, and then he is now on a 3-fight win streak. His last loss was against okay, I'm gonna try Elizu Zaleski dos Santos.
You're better man than me.
Yeah. We remember Dos Santos though. Because I'm sorry, I don't know why we're going through all of these, but Dos Santos is a really strong, muscular, like just big dude, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. He is he's really tough. So it's not a surprise that Strickland might have lost to him. All right. Ion Cutelabra and Dustin Jacoby. This is the one where that had all the controversy, right? So Cutelabra grabbed Jacoby in the face-off at the weigh-ins, grabbed him by the back of the head, and they started pushing and stuff like that. And this comes, and Dana White's standing there, and after they started pushing, Dana White's like, I should have stayed in the office. It's like, bruh, you remember when you were pissed off at Sean Shelby because of the push that eventually hurt
Daniel Cormier?
Not Daniel Cormier. The push that hurt the fighter from the last card.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So dude, trying to pull it up. So it was the fight. Thank you. What's up, Ulfric? So we what is the I'm trying to find the
I know you're talking about his name starts with a D. I just can't it won't roll off my tongue right now.
Yeah.
Benil Dariush.
No, it's not Benil Dariush. No. Benil Dariush is getting ready to fight. Yeah, I can't think of who he got. Let's talk about the next fight. I'm gonna keep I'm gonna pull this thing
first
up.
Back on to Ion Cutelabra and Dustin Jacoby, man. So this wound up being a split draw. The first round, Cutelabra, also known as what, the Hulk?
Something like that, yeah.
Dominated, like had 8 takedowns on Jacoby, man. Then rounds 2 and 3, I felt like Dustin came back and really put on a showing. But it wound up being a split draw as a result, man. That this goes back to the new scoring options in MMA, because I think one of the judges awarded a 10-8 round for that first round for Ion, and it was deserved. I'm surprised it wasn't like that on all 3 of the judges' cards. So yeah, moving on to the next fight though. This is one I definitely want to talk about.
Yeah,
Giga.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead. You can say it. Giga what?
Giga Chikadze versus Cub Swanson. Did I get it right?
Good. Yeah, you think you got it right.
So, man, Giga is a striking phenom from what I'm hearing and seeing these days. He went out and showed it in devastating fashion right out the gate against a veteran Cub Swanson. Cub's been in the game like since WEC days.
Yeah.
By the way, he's only seemed to improve and get better.
Yeah, but then he had little he fell off a little bit. Lost a couple of big fights. I think he got the fight for a title shot and got hurt, like beat up. By the way, the fight that we were trying to remember was Jeremy Stephens versus Drakkar Klose.
I knew it was a D in there.
Pushed Drakkar Klose, and because he was dehydrated, gave him basically whiplash. and wasn't able to continue. So Sean Shelby took the brunt of Dana White's ire because because Sean Shelby didn't prevent that, and then you had Ion Cutelaba and Dustin Jacoby do the same thing in front of the boss, and so now it's like the whole UFC world was like, all right, Dana, who you gonna yell at now? All right, but I digress. Let's get back into Giga Chikadze.
So yeah, Giga comes out first, not even a minute into the fight or whatever, lands like three different shots. I think a kick, a punch, and then finally what's known as the Giga kick. Yeah. It's a liver shot, really. It's a shot specifically designed to hit the liver, and Cub almost immediately reacted. Like there's no way he was getting out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the interesting thing is whenever they talked to Giga, he was like, "Yeah, when I landed that kick, I kind of knew it was over." He's like, "That's why you saw me kind of walk away," and then because he's like, "I got a lot of respect for Cub Swanson," and he's like, I didn't want that to happen, but I had to finish the fight. And so he went in there and finished the fight, but you saw that he wasn't sometimes they just try to do some damage while they're trying to finish the fight, and and that's something that I think goes to show how some fighters can see that their opponent is injured and still finish the fight without creating more damage. Interesting fact. Giga Chikadze is one of 2 men to KO Cub, the other man being Jose Aldo.
Good company to be in.
Yep. And he did it. He did it with a flying knee in 8 seconds. WEC 41. Flying knee to the KO. So, main event of the evening, Dominic Reyes versus Jiri Prochazka. Jiri Prochazka defeated Reyes by a spinning elbow. Now, let's go back and look at the fight picks.
I wasn't here, so.
You weren't here, and now I understand why John Keys did not show up today. Because John Keys had Dominic Reyes, and I had Jiri Prochazka. Now, I said it last week, and I'll say it again this week. I do not like Prochazka's fighting style. I don't like it. His hands are down, and the dude takes too many punches to the face for my liking, because eventually one of them's going to ring that bell, and he is going to go out. But until that happens, this dude is fearless. He's standing in there with Dominic Reyes with his hands down. Reyes is landing bombs, and the dude is just walking forward like what
like, yeah, eating them like Skittles.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Reyes proved to be pretty, what's the word I'm looking for,
durable,
resilient, and durable as well, man, because he was taking some damage and was like, hey, I'm still game, I'm still in this.
Yeah, I mean, everything. And as you saw, broken nose, his eye was swollen. I mean, it was I think he's probably got a broken orbital as well. But he was just taking these massive punches from Prochazka, and even though he was returning and landing, Prochazka was like, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep coming right in, and he eventually go ahead.
The only thing that would have made this fight any better was afterwards if John Jones had tweeted something.
Yeah.
Like, that's all that was missing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it was a spinning elbow defeat, like, that's a John Jones kind of, coined move, right? And so it would have been cool that John Jones would have been like, hey, Francis, you want one of those? I can give you one of those, something. Or, it would have been cool if Jiri Prochazka would have been like, hey, I landed a spinning elbow. Hey, John Jones, you want one of these? You want some of this, old man?
My take on it is John's exit from the light heavyweight division and how much action and all these new guys we're seeing, prop up and make waves for themselves. Prochazka, I honestly do not want to see him tossed into a title fight just yet. I really would like him to get a couple more fights in just for the experience. He took his time coming to the UFC in the first place.
Right.
But looking at him, there are some holes in his game that I really feel he needs to shore up before he decides to take on Jan Blachowicz or anyone else in that light heavyweight division up there for that title. And I definitely think he's capable of doing it. He strikes me as a true martial artist. That was one of the things that the show really put forth, or the narrative they put forth about him. In fact, you mentioned his hair earlier. I think his ponytail.
Yep.
He likened that back to the samurai days. That's where he said he got that from. That was a samurai tradition. So he likens himself as a full scale martial artist, and so that's what that's for.
All right.
Afterwards, I think he even said something though. He's like, but yeah, this hair is also an antenna. He's like, and the reason I threw that spinning back elbow was because I was in the flow. My antennas were telling me to go with it, and so he went with it.
Well, it banked him $100,000. He got $100,000 for that spinning elbow. Fight of the night and performance of the night. That is a rare thing. It doesn't happen very often. But I frankly think he deserved it. I mean, he stood there and banged with a guy who fought back to back for the title, and then knocked him out with a just a devastating. I mean, he was asleep. Dominic Reyes
he was out. He went right out. If you're Dominic, what are you thinking you do now? Because this is what, his third loss?
Second.
In his many outings?
His third loss.
John Jones.
John Jones. But he didn't really lose to John Jones.
We know this, but on record, on paper, he's got 3 losses.
He's got 3
and
losses.
all of these guys are well, other than with the exception of Jerry, but who now probably is in the top tier of that light heavyweight division. So where do you go if you're Dominic?
I think what you do is you want that fight between the loser of Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz. So you either get that one back with Jan Blachowicz if Teixeira wins, and if Teixeira loses, like many people think he will, then you go Dominic Reyes, Glover Teixeira. So let me see. I want to see if Dominic Reyes has ever fought Glover Teixeira, because I mean that's going to be the thing that's going to hurt that. But I don't think that the UFC should give up or somehow like start thinking about Dominic Reyes doesn't have the chops, because he showed, even though he got finished, he put some bombs on Yuri Prochazka.
And that finish, you also have he just got caught with that. That was not like it was purposefully set up or anything like that. He got caught, and that happens to fighters.
Right. So I'm looking. Yeah, it looks like Reyes has not fought Glover Teixeira. So that would be an interesting fight. Reyes versus Glover Teixeira. If Glover Teixeira loses, maybe he tries to call out Jan Blachowicz if he wins. Another interesting fight for Dominic Reyes. Let me see if he's fought Thiago Santos yet. So you could potentially see him versus Maheta. And that become a fight for maybe a number 1 contender or something like that. So, but Dana White said after having beaten Dominic Reyes, the fight to make after Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz is Yuri versus the winner. So he is getting a title shot. They are going to give it to him. He is on the up and up.
They need to let this man build his career, man. You can't toss him in there like that. Don't get me wrong. He may very well go in there and just dominate Jan. I bet that's not what the odds will say.
Well, if there's something about Polish power. We'll see. So Ulfric is saying here, he's saying realistically, Reyes could also face Ankalev or rematch Volkan Ozdemir. Yeah. I felt like he was pretty well. That was a decision there. So those are good options, but where do they land on the Volkan Ozdemir is an 8. Dominic Reyes, I guess he's going to fall down a little bit lower. Ankalev is at 7. So yeah, I mean, and you could even possibly throw Anthony Smith in that list as well. So probably those are some of the fighters that you would want to have him fight. Falling from number 3 probably down to 5. So maybe he can get that Thiago Santos fight, but it's more likely that he'll probably face off Anthony Smith or Ankalev or Ozdemir, because Ozdemir's coming
Speaking of
up.
speaking of Anthony Smith, I can't remember who, but there was a Factory X mission mentioned on the card, and I can't remember what fighter was out of Factory X.
Well, the person who is the end-all be-all of Factory X knowledge is Kelechi KC Onyebuchi, and unfortunately, he did not join us today. But we'll have to see who that person is.
I was gonna say, I love how Factory X has just become a part of our show. Like it's even part of the drinking game.
Yeah, it's part of the drinking game. That's another one. So if you guys are playing the drinking game, Factory X has been mentioned again. Let's go ahead and close the book on this one and put this one on the shelf. This card is history. Now let's look at the headlines that are making waves in the wake of UFC Vegas 25. This is Finding the Angles. This is where we look at those headlines. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is Endeavor, the parent company of the UFC, went IPO on Thursday, my birthday. And
did you buy some stock?
No. And it's funny because everybody's like, "Oh, I bought some UFC stock." No, you didn't. You didn't buy UFC stock. You bought Endeavor stock. And Endeavor needed that money because they have been hurting financially. Like the UFC is a subsidiary of Endeavor. You did not buy. That's like saying that you. Okay, this is a bad example. So that's like buying Berkshire Hathaway and saying, "Oh, I've got stock in GE." No, you don't. Berkshire Hathaway, I don't think owns GE. That's why I said it's a bad example. But you buy the parent company, you're not buying the subsidiary. If they spin off the UFC to a public company, then yes, then you can buy UFC stock. But it is Endeavor stock, and they raised $511 million. I don't know what it's trading, what it closed at trading, but it closed trading lower than their initial public offering. So let's see where it's going to open, or where it's trading at the end on Friday.
I'm gonna have to reach out to my boy Phil over on the Ask Philip podcast and see whether or not we should.
Now let's have Phil on this show.
Oh, now you want to have
this show? Yes.
Now
Phil, we got a topic.
Phil. I can't wait to talk to him now. Now, Phil, you see who's been hating? You see who's been hating?
It's not that I've been hating. It's just, now we got a financial something that we can talk about. Let's talk finances and stocks in this Endeavor stock. And let's look at Endeavor and say, oh, in 2020, you guys were in the red, and now that you've purchased controlling interest in the UFC and went IPO, what does that do for their business? I'm interested in that. That would be some good stuff. Let's bring Ask Phil and ask Phil what he thinks about that. Now, here's the interesting thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
All right, UFC owner, because he's the head of Endeavor, Ari Emanuel, talks about the Endeavor IPO, and then he's talking about Zhang Weili and has no idea who she is. This does not bode well. Like, for those of you who are buying this stock because you love the UFC, understand that the head of the parent company is not a fight game guy. He's not. So he's talking about it, and he says, well, here's what I have to say to you. Even during the pandemic, we didn't have live audiences. We didn't have commercial pay-per-views. We beat our EBITDA, which is earnings before interests, taxes, and amortization, by 10%. Now with the reopening, you just saw we had live audiences for the first time. In Houston, we're going to have a live audience. July, we're going to have another live audience. Our direct-to-customer business on Fight Pass is up 40%. Our commercial numbers and marketing numbers are up. China's going to be bigger than ever. Yeah, UFC is doing great. We have talked about this ever since 2020. Like, we have been talking about how great the UFC is doing, which is why Endeavor needed to have control of the UFC, because the rest of their business is tanking. And then he says, actually, because of the fight, even though our Chinese champion lost, Li Na, There was
Who is he
over
thinking?
1 billion views out of China. It's like, that ain't even close. That's not even close.
I don't know what he was thinking.
So yeah, this is as bad as UFC Fight Kit, when Reebok took over the Fight Kit and had fighters' names misspelled, and they had like the wrong colors and everything for the fighters and where they were from. That this is another example, and I'd love to talk to Dana White and be like, dude, you said that when Bellator got bought by Viacom, that the problem that Bellator was going to face was that it's being run by people who were not people who were in the fight game. Now that the UFC is part of Endeavor and Ari Emanuel is making decisions, how is that going to ultimately hurt the UFC? I feel like that we're going to see an opportunity open up for a ONE FC, for a PFL, where those are promotions that are still being run by fight guys. Will we see the UFC begin to decline because it's being run by business guys who don't care about anything other than the bottom line? I think that's going to create an opportunity. You don't have anything to say about that? Like,
I just got shook by something I saw in the comments over there. I don't know if you saw that in regards to Fabia.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna pass by that and just. But John Keys says that Lee Na is a tennis player.
Maybe that's what he had on the brain.
Okay, but since John Keys is clearly watching the show, Dominic Reyes got dominated, devastated, and embarrassed.
I like how you had that on tap waiting. Since John Keys is watching the show.
So yeah, I think that it's going to be we're going to watch and see what happens with decisions that are being made, because we're going to see that them continue to put pressure to drive revenue up, which means that pay-per-view costs are going to probably go up. We're going to see Fight Pass go up to $10 or $11. We're going to see, we're going to start seeing these prices drive up to try to balance the ship over at Endeavor. And I think the UFC is this is going to be a tough time for the UFC. There is another Twitter beef. Is
that what we're calling it?
Featuring your favorite fighter and mine, John Bones Jones. And let me just say, John Jones is not his record is 26-1 as a fighter, with 1 no contest, and it's 1-26 when it comes to Twitter beefs. This dude cannot win a Twitter beef.
Oh.
I mean,
and against a guy whose primary language is not English.
Yes, like
how do you lose a Twitter beef to a guy who's oh my goodness.
So it's one of those things where it's like, John Jones, I literally tweeted out to John Jones and said, let me coach you on how to talk smack to Francis Ngannou. He is the heavyweight champ. Like I told him, I said, just channel your inner Killmonger. Like, post memes and gifs of Killmonger throwing the Black Panther off the mountain and yelling, I'm your king now. Like, that's all you need to do. Now, we know in the movie, he didn't finish him off. But all I got to say is, then you put in, the only difference is that I'm going to make sure you're finished. Boom. You got material for days, John Jones. Like, listen to me. You need trash talking management. I can be your trash talking management. Let me be your Josh Fabia.
Oh, I love it.
But only in the trash talking game. I don't want to touch your business. I don't want to be anything to do with the fighting. Just let me manage your trash talking. I got you, bro. I got you.
Give me your Twitter account.
Give me your Twitter account, and I will get you back to 500. You and Artem Lobov, man. So, everyone's speculating as to whether or not this Twitter beef is going to lead to a signing of a contract. It looks like the UFC still wants to go Francis Ngannou with the rematch of Derek Lewis, but John Jones needs to get into the relevance. Why? Because after Kamaru Usman defeated Jorge Masvidal, he's like, name a person who's more dominant than me right now. Name a person who has done what I've done. Why am I not number one in the pound for pound rankings? He's got a great point, because let's just look at it. How many fights has he fought since John Jones fought his last fight? Why is John Jones at the number one of the pound for pound division when the dude hadn't fought in quite some time?
Because he's John Jones.
Because he's John Jones. I mean, that is a relevant answer.
Like,
let's circle B.
I was gonna say that's like that Texas Walker or the Chuck Norris meme.
Yeah.
What does Chuck Norris do? Whatever Chuck Norris wants to do.
Right. So, but every time that John Jones John Keys is clearly he's aiming picograms. There you go. But John Jones needs to get into the octagon. He needs to fight somebody. Take a tomato can at heavyweight and just show what you can do. Like
no.
Take a tomato can and just.
How old is John Jones right now?
Old. No, he's like 32, right? 32, 33. He's
So
pretty young.
most people would say, well, yeah, especially in the heavyweight divisions, but he's had 20, how many fights? 20, 25, 20?
He's 26-1-1, right? So 28 fights.
I can't help but think, with the caliber of opponents that John has faced throughout his career, that at some point he's thinking, I want to be done here in the near future. Like I don't have much else to prove.
Then why leave the light heavyweight division? You come into the
he
heavyweight
wants
division
to win that heavyweight title and then call it a wrap. He's only going to get one or two shots at that. If he goes to heavyweight and fights a Stipe and gets hurt, gets rocked, gets whatever, you just jacked up your opportunity for that Ngannou fight.
See, but that's the thing. Unless you're calling Stipe Miocic a tomato can.
No, I'm saying if he's going to fight somebody else in the heavyweight division, they're not going to toss him some easy tomato can. They're going to give him somebody of relevance. It's a big fight because John Jones is on it.
Yeah, but he's starting off in the heavyweight division. So give him someone like Marcin Tybura or Blagoy Ivanov or something like that. Someone 13-12
who's turning in for that pay-per-view?
It's John Jones.
Who's turning in for that pay-per-view?
Okay, do this. Put John Jones on the same fight card as Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, but let him fight Blagoy Ivanov.
I'm gonna need you to stick to working on John's Twitter account and let somebody else handle the matchmaking.
All right. Listen, that may be that. Look, I'll accept that as fact. I will step back. But people are hoping that he is going to make that return and get that fight against Francis Ngannou. So we'll keep our eyes out for that one. Chris Weidman is back on Twitter. He's been through the surgeries, and dude is kind of funny. He is taking this. He is taking this really well. Like all of the stuff surrounding. He posted a video of his knee of his leg. It was not a video. It was a screenshot of his leg, and said, my knee. He took something with his knee and the X-ray of his knee, and it showed that what made it also into the picture was parts of his reproductive system. So it's like, yeah, it's all the way down to my knee, and so it was one of those things where it's like, Chris Weidman, really, you're putting these jokes after this terrible injury? But he does seem to be, making, light, not really making light, but like being lighthearted and fun. Like, hey guys, I'm okay. He did say that he's had 23 surgeries, but this is the most traumatic and most painful thing ever. You know, it was one of those things where he's been trying to think positively this whole time. He goes, I've been through a lot of ups and downs, but I'll say this is the most traumatic and painful thing I've ever been through. I know that it's going to take a long time. It's really tough for me. He said that as I put my foot down, I don't remember putting my foot down and feeling any pain or anything like that, because I was still focused on letting him know that I was good. I guess my leg snapped underneath me, and I happened to look down, and when I see my leg look like rubber, that's when I think I just went crazy, weird spot. I went face down. It was like a nightmare in my head. There was no way that was my leg. There was no way I was looking at my leg and my leg was looking like that. Like the moment. So you know, we were debating this on the show, is that, you know, his leg broke when he kicked Uriah Hall. Well, it may have fractured, but it didn't break until he put his weight back on it. And so I would guess that he instantly went into shock when he saw his leg look like that. So it's quite the interesting thing. But, you know, I really wanted to just put this on the show to say that Chris Weidman seems to be doing better now that he's got that rod in his leg. He's back on the mend. And John Anik said that he believes that Chris Weidman will return to action. I think he will, but I don't think he'll ever be the same. I don't think he will ever be the same fighter that he was. All right, let's go on. Andy Ruiz versus Chris Arreola. Andy Ruiz destroyed him. Unanimous decision victory. You know, he's back. Dude lost 30 pounds. He's in fighting shape, which is still square. Like, that dude has like no neck, just a big trunk for body with legs and two arms that move fast as hell. Like, you, sir, Andy Ruiz, you were built for fighting. That's what you were. That was what God put you on this planet to do, was fight, because he gave you all of the tools. You are not elegant at all. You are just freaking, what was that He-Man that was just like he had no head, no neck. It just, he was in the He-Man character, in the He-Man Masters of the Universe.
I remember what you're talking about. I don't remember the name, but dude, Andy Ruiz, what's next for him?
You know, I don't know, to be honest. I'll be honest and say that I don't really follow boxing as much. I am interested in the heavyweights, but if you've got Anthony Joshua and you got Tyson Fury trying to make a fight, then Ram Man, that's it. That's the guy I was looking for. Andy Ruiz is Ram Man. That's and so maybe you get him Andy Ruiz versus Deontay Wilder. Can you do that fight? Is that fight possible?
All right.
So that would be something I'd be interested in. You know, Joe Rogan went on his podcast and he was talking smack about the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. Said a lot of things. Said it seems like it was safe, but he didn't think that young people should take it. And so that really brought the ire of a lot of people. And so Joe Rogan basically came back off of it and said, look, I'm not a doctor. The things I say on my podcast are off the top of my dome. I'm just talking. And he said that, you know, at the end of the day, he's like, I say stupid things. Like, don't turn to me as the guy.
Well, your news is
yeah, like, if you're trying to make a decision on your health, don't talk to a guy who's a fighter, a commentator, and a podcaster. Like, I am not your dude.
And a comedian.
Yeah. So, he's and I think that is fair. Like, he's not taking himself seriously, and people should not take his advice seriously when it comes to whether or not they should take the vaccine. Now, can he?
Well, now, vice versa, Joe also goes on to bring different people on his show who are knowledgeable and can speak to that, though. So in some ways, people do turn to him for, not him specifically, but turn to his show for information.
And I'm not saying that his show cannot be informative, but his show, let's face it, his show is a comedy show. It's designed for comedy. Sometimes he does some serious topics, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, just like there is the fallacy that just because someone is a doctor doesn't mean that everything they say has credibility or makes sense.
Mhm.
Just because someone is a comedian doesn't mean that they can't have a valid point.
Right.
And so I'm not quote canceling Joe Rogan and saying Joe Rogan is a comedian and so he needs to shut up about vaccinations and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that at all, because he can say some very he can do research and he can make a point, and even though he's a comedian, he can still make a valid point about vaccinations. But if you're trying to decide whether or not vaccines are for you, you probably don't want to go to a comedian first for your information. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what that's basically where he's made the statements like, look, I'm not a doctor. He goes, I'm an effing moron. I'm a cage fighting commentator who's a dirty stand-up comedian. We just told you I'm drunk most of the time, and I do testosterone, and I smoke a lot of weed, but I'm not a respected source of information, even for me. I at least try to be honest with what I'm saying. He's like, I don't even listen to me when it comes to this stuff because I know that I am under the influence most of the time when I'm talking, which is I gotta credit Joe Rogan. I'll take it.
Mhm.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and look at the fights that are coming up this weekend. Of course, this one, because the UFC doesn't have a fight card this weekend, I thought maybe we could talk about Bellator. This is the fight card. All right, Bellator is coming at us with Bellator 258, Archuleta versus Pettis, Friday, May 7th at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut. They've been doing a lot of fights there. Maybe that's their version of the Apex Arena.
I know there, and also Oklahoma. They also put on quite a few shows there.
In Thackerville, Oklahoma, specifically, which was crazy. As I was driving, we were going on our road trip. We passed through Thackerville, Oklahoma, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is where Bellator has their fights." So we got 4 fights on the card. Patrici Pitbull versus Peter Quali. Michael Venom Page versus Derek Anderson. Not the Derek Anderson we know. It's a different Derek Anderson. Anthony Johnson, who was supposed to fight Yoel Romero in the first round of the light heavyweight Grand Prix. Yoel Romero was out because he failed his medical screening before the fight.
Yeah, I definitely would like more information on that.
Yeah, so we don't quite know what the failure was. I mean, it could be COVID.
Nah, I'm almost willing to bet you it's blood pressure.
You think so? The dude is in his mid-40s.
Yeah, a lot of fighters go in and, the white coat syndrome is real. Doctors come in and give you your physical and your blood pressure's running up, and they're like, I need you to get that down in order for me to pass you through here.
Yoel Romero is 44 years old. You know what? Oh my gosh. I did not know this until just now. I was today years old when I found this out. Yoel Romero and I were born one day apart. How you like that? So, yeah. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna start celebrating Yoel Soldier of God Day, April 30th every year. All right.
Well,
so
let's hope he's all right and gets back on his card soon.
Well, he will, but he won't be fighting Anthony Johnson because they got him a new fight. Jose Augusto. I don't know if he's from Brazil or not. You got to have a hard J if you're in Brazil. And so that's what's going to be the opening round of the Grand Prix. Anthony Johnson is looking super slim. I mean, he is looking very, very ready for light heavyweight fighting. Coming back from his powerlifting days. And then in the main event of the evening, we got Juan Archuleta versus Sergio Pettis. Interesting that that's the main event and not Anthony Johnson.
Or not Michael Venom Page.
Right. Yeah. When do you have a bantamweight fight as your main event when you've got welterweight and it's not a title shot? It doesn't look like it's a title shot. Only way that I would see a bantamweight fight on as your main event is if it's a title shot. Let's look at Bellator and see if it's a title shot. So
I mean, you got three arguably of your best stars on the roster on the card, and
it's a title shot.
Okay, all right.
But Sergio Pettis fighting for the title this quick? What?
Look, we didn't even know this was a title shot. I don't mean it in a bad way towards those fighters, but I didn't know that Juan Archuleta was the bantamweight champion over there.
Yeah. So,
or actually, am I wrong? Is Sergio the champion, or is
no? It's Juan Archuleta, and he's making his first title defense against Sergio Pettis. Okay. So, there you go. All right. Do you want to make a flash fight? I'm not comfortable making a flash fight pick. To be honest, the only one I would have wanted to make a flash fight pick on would be Anthony Johnson versus Yoel Romero. But now that he's fighting Jose Augusto, I don't know that I'm capable of making flash fight picks on these fights.
I'll be your Huckleberry. Come on.
All right.
I'm picking fight number 1, Patricio Pitbull George.
All right. Okay.
Fight number 2, Michael Venom Page and Derek Anderson. Michael Venom Page.
Okay.
Fight number 3, Anthony Johnson versus Jose Augusto. Let's just go with AJ.
All right. Yeah, I'm thinking that's a good one. That was what I was going to go with against Yoel Romero anyway.
And then Juan Archuleta versus Sergio Pettis. I'm going with Sergio Pettis just because I like him.
All right. It has been duly noted. It is on wax. All right.
I love how you didn't make any picks, but okay.
No. Seriously, I'm like,
if you scared, say you scared, Ryan.
All right, fine.
You don't like hitting that crow button.
I don't like it at all. I'm going with Pitbull. I'm going with MVP. I'm going with Anthony Johnson, and I'm going with Archuleta.
Oh, okay. All right.
Listen, if I would have gone with Pettis, you'd have just said, "Well, all you did was pick my picks." So I'm not. I'm going to deviate.
Oh, so you picked just to be contrary?
No. Well, here's the thing, Pettis. I mean, he was a good fighter in the UFC, but he wasn't a great fighter in the UFC. Going over to Bellator, these Bellator fighters are legit. So
actually, didn't Juan Archuleta come from the UFC too, though?
See, now look at you. Let's see.
I could be wrong, but
no, he did not. Based upon what I'm looking at his record,
okay.
He has not fought in the UFC. Started fighting in Bellator in March 2018.
Okay.
So, follow us on social media. On Instagram, I'm at Combat Sports Talk.
I am at Darkside_Muay Thai_.
All right. John Keys is at Keys to Victory, and Kelechi KC Onyebuchi is at Push Pull Pray. You can find us on our website at www.combatsportstalk.com, and we are on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Trying to, yep. So, let's see. Let's do this here. So send a shout out to MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, MMA Mania, and Bloody Elbow, and the Intelligent Defense Discussion Group. All the sites that are helping us find stories for our show. On behalf of George G. Money Stallworth, my name is Ryan Smith, reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs. We'll catch you next time.